Welcome to Lanterns Live, the only live stream YouTube channel dedicated solely to Green Lantern. I'm Ralph, and as you can tell, I'm joined by Tim Sheridan. Tim, welcome to the show. Listen, I have so much to talk about. I did bring some bullet points. So I should probably pop those up.
Bring those up while you're getting those. Let me just say how jarring it is to see, because we're not using Zoom, which has filters. You know that like they have like the old Star Trek ladies, like they would like when they would cut to a close up of a woman on Star Trek, they would be like glowing and beautiful. Zoom has those filters, so I always look like 10 years younger.
I think StreamYard has it as well.
This is it. I'm aging over here.
I just found out before we started. I found out you're like pretty much a month older than I am.
Yeah, we're like so close. Yeah,
you just had your birthday.
Where were you born? Were you born out on West Coast?
Yeah, I was born in La Mirada. Grew up in Downey, California.
Okay, I'm an East Coaster, so so we even have a 3-hour difference there too. So we're maybe even closer in age than we thought. I grew up in Rhode Island, in a tiny little town in Rhode Island.
Are there big towns in Rhode Island?
There's a couple. It depends how you define big. In my town, we used to measure the population of the town in cows and not people because it was a more impressive number.
That's Green Lanterns podcast is here. Grew up in New Jersey.
Oh yeah.
So we'll get into this.
What exit?
Yeah, what exit? We'll get into this, but Green Lanterns podcast, Will is the one who recommended that I read Alan Scott, The Green Lantern, which we'll get into. Yeah, we'll get into it. But first, I asked this of all of my first-time guests. You're no different. What is your secret origins with the character Green Lantern, as far as like any sort of like your first memory being aware of any Green Lantern character at all?
Yeah, so let me preface all of it by saying Green Lantern has never been my number one. Like he was never growing up. Green Lantern wasn't my favorite character that I gravitated to. Mm-hmm. And certainly this gets even more complicated because I'm known now for my work with Alan Scott, which is even it's a tricky thing to. Alan Scott is the original Green Lantern, but he's so different and separate from the Green Lantern Corps and the Silver Age stuff. But my earliest association with Green Lantern would have been Super Friends. Mm-hmm. Would have been Hal Jordan on Super Friends. Yeah, because and here we are, Ralph. We're of an age,
right?
So that's how I knew who Green Lantern was and kind of what he did. And then so what happens is when you get into comics, everybody knows this, you start reading like a title and then you have to read other titles and then you're reading more titles. And like, I was a DC kid and I was reading all these DC comics and, Green Lantern characters would show up in these comics and you kind of have to keep up and you're learning who they are and figuring out more. And the fact that, there isn't just one Green Lantern, there's all these other Green Lanterns. This is me as a kid. And then like Alan Scott shows up and I don't even know what that guy is. Like, it was so weird. Like, wait, he looks like a sorcerer, he's like,
he looks like Doctor Strange.
And then they changed his costume and it was wild. And he was Sentinel for a while. Right. But yeah, that was kind of it. Like I was a Batman kid. I was like Batman all the way. I
mean, 89. How big was 89?
Oh, man. Like, it was funny because I got into Batman right before I knew about the movie coming out or that it was going to happen. And, like, I started reading Batman comics. And then the Batmania happened with the movie, which only made it, even more exciting for me. But, like, some of the first Batman comics I read were Marv Wolfman. I talk about this all the time, so if you heard this, I'm sorry, but Marv did an arc where it was like Batman Year 3 and Lonely Place of Dying, and those books like just set me up for a lifetime of like being a storyteller and somebody who's obsessed with DC and with Batman and with the kinds of stories that he told with those in that story. And I think a lot of the stories Marv tells involve consequence, like big consequences, for things that might have happened a while ago. And like that story had Dick Grayson coming home for the first time from from, or at least that's how it was framed, from the Titans, and basically coming home to get his, like that story about the kid who has to, mom sends him to the bar to get his dad from the bar,
Yeah.
kind of what it was. He was going to like bring his dad back off the cliff after Jason Todd's death, and that's just like, there's so many levels to that. It was so, as a kid, I'm like, yes, give me more. I was really into stories like that, which was really because of Transformers the movie. That's what did it for me. Was Transformers the movie is like my favorite movie of all time, and it was even then, and in '86, and that was because that movie was like this big screen adaptation of these toys and these cartoons that I love. It looked better, it looked bigger, and it told a story that had huge consequences. And like there were things that happened in that movie that Marv Wolfman worked on the animated series after the movie came out, and he brought in consequences of things that happened in the movie, and they played out in the series. That stuff was just, I don't know, it was huge to me. It taught me about canon and universes and world building, and I just found all of it, just intoxicating. And Green Lantern is kind of its own encapsulated, in some ways, version of that within the DC canon. I mean, there's this huge history and legacy all around. You could just be a Green Lantern fan, and spend your whole life and never experience all of it.
That's me. So I again grew up Super Friends. In '89 when Batman came out. It was actually the year after, '90. I remember my family took a road trip down from Southern California up to Washington, and it was like Dick Tracy mania. And so I try to get my family to stop and pick up every Dick Tracy comic possible, or every Dick Tracy. No, go to McDonald's. They had the cards. Like McDonald's
the movie was that. Because the movie was out, was it 90 when the movie came out?
I think it was 90.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I remember I picked up a Batman and a Green Lantern comic book at a drugstore spinner rack.
That's how I got all my comics as a kid, was Douglas Drug, the spinner rack at Douglas Drug.
Yeah. And then I started, I did a subscription. My parents got me a subscription to Green Lantern that would show up every month in like a little poly bag. Sometimes they throw a card in there or something. And so for me, Green Lantern started in 1990 until my subscription ran out. I think I did 2 years. In high school, Kyle Rayner came out, became a big fan of his, and kind of slowed off a little bit. But then with Jeff Johns' run in 2005 with Rebirth, and then it's like been every issue since. So I'm mainly a Green Lantern fan. One of the problems is I would only catch Alan Scott whenever he just kind of popped in to say hi, or just if he had a couple of panels with Jade or something. So my knowledge of Alan Scott was it's like paper thin. You and everybody.
I mean, that was the thing. I mean, even though he was always around, and and he had some great stories, and but I think people, and it reached so far back. A lot of people weren't reading Golden Age comics. They weren't necessarily easy to find too when we were kids.
Oh, it's tough. It's still tough.
Yeah.
Like on Comixology, there's one issue of an Alan Scott Golden Age story. It's like a Vandal Savage book that they released. Vandal Savage? Am I thinking? I think it's Vandal Savage. That came out around the time Vandal Savage showed up in CW's Legends of Tomorrow or something. Like it's just one issue. And so it just didn't exist for me. Like you just can't get it. Since reading your book is the first Alan Scott story that I've sat down and read. I have a friend at work who says I should go back and read the JSA that Jeff Johns did a while back.
No question.
Which right now I'm just starting up the Supergirl World tomorrow. Then after that, I'm going to read that JSA. But thanks to Will, he gave me access to the Origins, the All American Comics 16.
16, yeah. And they also did it. They told the story again in Secret Origins 18, which you see a lot of stuff. I mean, I pulled a lot and really tried to tie it in a way that it felt organic, even though there was a timey-wimey thing that happened that changed things a little bit. It was still the basic characters and events of the origin.
Well, I'll tell you this. So you were kind enough to send me some stuff. You sent me a copy of the book, which I thank you for. And then you also sent me the follow-up, the DC Pride. I'm going to cover this in June.
Great.
I haven't read
Thank
it yet.
you.
I'll cover it in June.
Good. Well, what happened was we did the Alan Scott book, and then they asked me. I hadn't ever contributed to the Pride anthology, and Andrea Shea at DC called me and said, "Hey, we want to do a thing, and we want it to involve Alan Scott in a significant way, and we wonder if you have any." Pieces of that story that you still want to tell, or anything that's sitting out there, and how can we do it in a way that it feels like anthology, but it's one big story, which we've never done before. And I was just so excited to kind of tell a little bit more about Alan and Vlad. And so we did that. And so it's a great story, I think, in there with a bunch of different writers who came in and contributed, who were terrific, great artists as well. And we could talk about that again. And I think it's being released now. They're doing a hardcover release or a trade release of it as well. So that's awesome. That's going to be coming out very soon. Anytime now, I think.
So I read Alan's origin story, the 1940, I believe, 1940.
Yeah, 1940. Yeah,
origin story, and I read it, and it's basically the origin is like maybe 6 pages, and I was floored when I read it, because as I was reading it, I had just come off of reading your book.
Yeah.
And I knew what you were doing. I knew I knew sort of the broad strokes of Alan's sort of backstory. He was an engineer. He was on a train. There was a glowing Green Lantern. The plane crashed. He's like the only one to survive. He creates a ring out of that. Like, I knew like the basic stuff. And so reading your book first, I'm like, I get this really good, like, fleshed out story, right? And then I pick up these like 6 or 7 pages from, 70 years ago? No, probably closer to 80. And
75 years ago, yeah.
No,
it was more than that.
So I read those. My math is horrible. I'm horrible at math.
Yeah, I can't do anything.
Whatever 1940 was, that long ago. As soon as I read that book, or the origins, I jumped on Blue Sky and DM'd you and was like, do you want to come on the show? Because I have some thoughts. And when I read the origins, I was so excited because you had already filled the gaps for me, and they fit in pretty seamless. When I read yours, I'm like, wait, I thought Alan Scott was like a train engineer, like up in the front, like an engineer, but you made him like just like an engineer that like creates like stuff, tech and whatever. And then when I read the origins for the first time, it doesn't say in there that he's a train engineer. I was like, oh, so your story really went in like panel by panel and really picked it apart and filled in the gaps really nicely.
Well, and look, a lot of that stuff is stuff that has come out over the years, over the decades. Yeah. Other writers have filled in little bits and pieces here and there. Alan, having a company and being responsible for like the design of like the bridge or that they're going over, or and then he's got his competitor in the workplace as well. Like he's a character that's, from the origins. All those, like a lot of that stuff, it's not like I came in and brought in a lot of new information. The new information in my book is really about the Crimson Flame and Vlad. And that's because Vlad was removed from the timeline. I mean, essentially the conceit of that book is that, Alan's origin story in All American 16 is how we all thought it played out. But in fact, we only saw it play out that way because someone had removed
redacted
Vlad from the timeline. So now that he's back in the timeline, this is actually how it should have played out. And so I didn't try to add a ton of new stuff. What I really thought was important, and this is because I'm thinking of my pal Jeff Johns, because he's so good at this, which is to go back through the canon and find all the little pieces and bits and bobs that you can sort of tie together and sew together and tell a clear, concise version of the story. I wanted this to be a book that you could just pick up without ever having read any other Alan Scott, and kind of have a good basis of who he is, and it would inspire you to go back and read, like All American 16 or Secret Origins 18, and then you'd read it and you go, oh, this is we didn't change too much of it. We kind of just altered some of it. I mean, like the character of Billy in my book is, Billings in the origin story. There's not really anything that we do that contradicts what was in that story. It's just that we're giving you more layers to it. We're trying to fill in, because Golden Age stories, as beautiful as
he's not explained whatsoever. He has something like 3 panels. And let me just tell you, the one thing that just blew my mind is this one panel of Billings. It says, taking the old Chinese lamp, the patient transforms it into a modern train lantern. And I thought it was interesting that the word transforms doesn't fit in the box. So they hyphenate it and bring forms into the second or into the third line. So the word trans is very, very prominent.
Well, obviously that was the intention of the right. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, even when I saw that, I was like, that level of detail.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was that Arkham story in my in our Alan Scott book is that is so much the heart of the book. I mean, it's when I pitched the story, I said, look, this is going to be a story about a man coming out of the darkness into the light, which is a great, very. But that's a Green Lantern story, right? That's not. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I mean, that's the best Green Lantern stories are about, somebody shining a great light and leading us out of turmoil and strife. And I said, in order for that story to work, we have to show the darkness. We're going to have to sit in a little bit of the darkness, and so that story is, it has a lot of darkness to it. There's also a lot of hope in it. And it's also, it's historically, it's accurate, though I play with the timeline a little bit. But it's also so still true today, what those guys are going through in that issue. We like to think that we've moved beyond so much in our society, but I think we're still fighting those fights.
Yeah.
But Alan got to be he's always a hero. Like in our book, like from the very beginning, before he ever meets the green, the emerald light, he's saving all of his shipmates, and then he's rescuing all the oppressed people out of the asylum, and he was destined, for this, his selflessness, and the crimson flame, the emerald flame comes to him and explains it to him. Eventually, he wants to know, why me, and he explains it to him. He tells him, this is what you got that other people don't have, and it's extraordinary. And it's who you are that made you worthy of this power.
I love the fact that now this isn't the first time that Alan has been portrayed as gay. I believe that started with Earth 2, maybe like 15
first
years
time
ago.
was Earth 2 was 15 years ago, something like that, right? So Earth 2, but that it's a different a different part of the multiverse. Although I think I think it was James Tynion who actually had Alan come out in DC main continuity, and in Infinite Frontier, and I wasn't in the room. I wasn't around. I can only speculate. I haven't talked to James about it, but I can only imagine that someone said, maybe it was James, said, if he's gay in this part of the multiverse, why isn't he gay in other parts of the multiverse? Because I don't think we've ever seen that before, where somebody has a different sexual orientation based on which Earth we're on. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever seen that. And so DC said, yeah, you're right. Let's do it. So they had him come out, but they didn't really have a story. They didn't have a lot of, they got a couple of short things, but they didn't really tell a big story to sort of give the fans, a look at, like, so why is that important? Like, why is it important to know that about him? What is that, how does that impact his story and his impact as a character? And so I was very grateful that I got asked to do it. Let me tell you, we've mentioned his name a couple of times now, but the only reason the Alan Scott book that I did exists is because of Jeff Johns. I met Jeff when we co-wrote Flashpoint Beyond together with Jeremy Adams. And Jeremy and I pitched a story, and it was going to touch on Flashpoint, which is a big signature Jeff Johns story. Right. And DC wanted to make it the official sequel to Flashpoint. And Jeremy and I said, does anybody want to call Jeff Johns and make sure that that's okay that we make a sequel to Flashpoint? And they said, yeah, we'll call Jeff. And they called him, and he said, not only do I want to do it, not only do I want them to do it, I want to help out and do it with them. And he came on, and that's how we met him. And we did that story together. At the end of Flashpoint Beyond, we tease the Golden Age Red Lantern. And that was a setup to the new Golden Age, which ended up being just a series of 3 books. But we did Wesley Dodds and Jay Garrick and Alan Scott, and then Jeff pitched it. He got them to greenlight the Alan Scott book. He told them I should be the one to write it, and DC agreed, and that was great. And then Jeff and I got on the phone and started talking about who this Red Lantern was, and we figured it all out. In the course of a phone call, I was, pitching stuff. He was pitching stuff, and we came up with something we thought was pretty cool.
I love the book. I know you watched my review, which looked like dog shit. Like that was one of the. Every once in a while, my streamer just looks like Sega CD, and I don't know why. But thanks for watching. Thanks for reaching out. But like this book, I just found it just wonderful. The fact that it takes place in like pre-World War II or around that time.
It's all pre-World War II. Yeah.
And being in the closet was, I know it's stuff has changed since then. I know things are still, I don't know. I'm like a straight man,
Yeah, but let me tell you something.
For me to say.
This is why I wrote this book. This book is for everybody. And I think it's important. Like, I'm a gay man, and I think that there's a lot of history in this comic book that we wrote and that we made. And, I feel like you got to know this is how we all get better. This is how everything gets better. We tell each other our stories, and we learn about each other. And there's a lot about this that is historically real and stuff that people have gone through. Alan represents a kind of, and let me tell you, man, I have been to convention after convention, and the number of people that come up to me, I'm going to get emotional thinking about it, who say that they saw themselves in this story because they hadn't seen a character represent. I remember as a New York Comic Con, a guy who was 75 years old came up to me and wanted a hug and said thank you. I've always been a comic book reader my whole life, but I never saw my story in comics until I read your book. And that's incredible. And I think that it's important for him to see his story, but it's important for you too as well.
Right. And I don't think, like, here's the thing. I feel weird saying it, but I was going to say, it's probably way easier than it was back in the 40s. I don't know how it is now, so I shouldn't be saying stuff like that. But I'm assuming it was definitely tougher. Like you,
it depends. It depends. There's some stuff is easier now. Some stuff is harder. There's something about. There was more of an innocence, perhaps, during those years where, people weren't, assumed to be hiding anything about their sexuality. There's also, there are also, society has had all kinds of different reactions to same-sex relationships and partnerships. And sometimes it was just stuff that was accepted and not judged and just sort of, just not talked about. Those things. And in that way, that sometimes it was easier to live a life that way than it may be in some places in this world today to live an open, honest life, where you can be punished and murdered for who you are. So I don't know. It's hard to say that it's better, but certainly there's a lot of stuff that is that goes into it. And what's important is that everybody we all hear about it. We all hear each other's stories. Like, why not? We should learn about our fellow neighbors and human beings, and they should also get to see them. So comics are for everybody, man. Everybody should see themselves in comics, and everybody should see everybody else in comics.
But what's great about the story being set when it's set is it's the time that Alan was introduced in comics, but also like people didn't talk about that stuff. Yeah. And so for me as a reader, I'm like, that's why we didn't get the full story to begin with. And it's nice to see it from his point of view.
He came out in he was figuring out who he was in a time when you kept that locked down. Yeah. And by the way, you married women and you had families and people have these are your neighbors. These are your grandparents, this is our real story. And it doesn't mean, a lot of people were concerned that when Alan Scott came out of the closet in continuity, that it meant that Jade and Obsidian would no longer exist. And the beauty of it was that James's story where he came out was he was coming out to Jade, and Obsidian in the story. So no, of course they're still here. And
that happens.
And that's a big part of the story. I mean, ultimately the story that we told, the ending of that story is where you learn kind of why we're hearing it. And we're hearing it because Alan is telling it to Todd, his son. And it's really the answer to a question about Todd's mother, who was a villain. And, it's about, how do you love someone like that? How can you have a relationship with someone like that? How can you have a family that is, begot of that hero villain relationship? And basically the whole book is Alan being like, you want to hear about a hero villain relationship,
right?
Lie down before you hurt yourself, Todd. Here we go. And he tells him the story of Vladimir.
Like Vlad, all of that stuff is just, it's really, really good. And again, being
I love Vladimir. I love Vlad so much.
Being a straight man, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that Vlad was a man. But like when Vlad came out as a villain, I was mad. Like, just as a reader, like at this point, it didn't matter. Gender didn't matter. None of that mattered. This is a person who hurt the hero that I am rooting for. And so for me, none of it, like, it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter. It's because you care about Alan. It's because you care about Alan. And that comes, and I think that's because of all the work people have done for so long there's a reason why that character endures, right. He's a great character and we love him and we want him to be happy. And also knowing that he's been living with this secret for so long. It's, you just want to find a little happiness, and then things can't go that way. When I pitched the story, we had a little summit, a little New Golden Age summit. It was at DC. It was Jeff Johns was there, me, Jeremy Adams, our editor, Andrew Marino, and Katie Kubert was there, our group editor. And Katie, I was talking about how Alan, all these guys that he knows, that he has known
intimately are turning up dead in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's murdering them, and
Right.
the fingers getting pointed to Alan. And Katie, I took a breath and I look over at Katie, and she looks, and she has practically a tear in her eye as she says, "Poor Alan.
Yeah.
Is he ever going to catch a break? Like in love? Like, will he ever?" You know? And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's how I feel too." And I think that's how it's like, that's why Vlad's turn is tragic, but also there's still so much love there between them. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
There's too much between them, because remember, they're not just two people who were in love. They were two people who were in love on an island. Nobody else could know. It was just the two of them. They were their world. Yeah. And, Johnny Ladd and Alan Scott, and all they had was each other. And, right. And then that's never going to go away. Coupled with the fact that the Emerald Flame and the Crimson Flame are two pieces of the same thing that are drawn together, right. And cannot be torn asunder. That may be part of their bond. We don't really know. They don't really know, but they know how they feel.
Yeah, Vlad was pretty brutal to Alan when it came to saying, like, it was just a mission.
Yeah.
And it
did you believe him?
That's what you're not going to give me an answer, are you?
I'm not, because but I will tell you this. I want
to believe.
I think I meet a lot of people who read comics, especially comics. They read it all at face value. And they think when a character says something that they're telling the truth. They always assume they're telling the right. truth. Mm-hmm. Or they think that if the character is speaking for the writer, that the writer is speaking through the character. That's never the case. Like, almost never the case. Like, our job is to put the words of that character in their mouth, and right. and whatever makes sense for them to say is what they say. And on top of that, they're unreliable sometimes. And who's more unreliable than a villain who's also maybe not a villain? Who knows what he is?
The villain, like, that's the thing, is he's portrayed as the villain and he says so much. And it's like one of those things where I'm just like,
I'm the villain.
I want him so bad to just be like, there was still something there. Like, that time spent together it's still special in any way.
But you know that, was it issue 4? Issue 4, with when he's got Alan in the bubble, and and they're talking about the lake house, and they're talking about you get a sense,
that's the thing. It's not super clear, but I try to be an optimist, but I'm also really skeptical. Like, it's a hard.
You think there's hope? You think there's hope for Vlad? You think he doesn't have to? He doesn't have to be the villain, as he calls himself.
The fact that he says he is,
but
does he
believe
aware?
It? But does he believe it? He does. He does a villainous thing. He kills a whole bunch of people.
Maybe right? He feels like it's he wants it to be. He wants it to be back how it was, but he
wants it to be simple. He wants it to be that simple.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is their relationship is so complicated.
Yeah.
That all he's trying to do is to make it simple. And unfortunately, the simplest version of it is, I'm the villain, you're the hero, we don't get along.
He lives in a world where he was like groomed to be a soldier, a spy, a warrior, and all of this stuff. And when he met Alan, got some humanity out of him, and maybe Vlad saw a different life, but like it's maybe has too much cynicism to believe that he can like just go back to that. Like, it's just that easy. He's so oppressed. I don't know. I what he did to Alan, I'm like, screw that guy. Crimson flags, red flags everywhere. Like,
crimson Alan flags.
but but I want to believe, like, they were so, like, the very first page you open up in the book is them two together. It's like their relationship. It's like the very first thing you get into, and so it's like that's what you latch on to immediately.
Because I didn't have any time. Yeah, but actually, the first thing is J. Edgar Hoover, which was great. Which was I loved it.
What a gift!
I say it was great because it was Kian Tormey, the artist, who I had made a vague passing reference to J. Edgar Hoover, just one line, just a passing reference in the outline to J. Edgar Hoover. It was later in the book too, and Kian, who is an Irishman who is a student of American history, said to me, he's like, I just read a book about J. Edgar Hoover and the things he did to people and the blackmailing and he said it just feels like he would, in this time, in this place, he would be blackmailing Alan, wouldn't he? And I was like, oh man, you're not kidding. Like it's absolutely right. And also he was a character in the Golden Age JSA books. They called him the director and, the director of the FBI. And, so again, I'm not like introducing something that like J. Edgar Hoover was always around. What I've done is given you more context for why the JSA exists and what he's getting out of it through the context of now how we know J. Edgar Hoover, the manipulative guy that he was and what he needed from them.
One of my favorite books is Darwin Cook's Justice League New Frontier.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way he takes the time between Golden Age heroes and Silver Age heroes and brings in like a historical element to it, like the Korean War and all of that stuff is some of my favorite things. I'm not like a massive history buff, but when you start bringing these people into the real world, like Alan Scott and stuff, it's like kind of just perfect. When you introduce J. Edgar Hoover, like one of the things I know about J. Edgar Hoover was like he was a cross-dresser, or there was some stuff, some skeletons in his closet, and then when you had him blackmailing Alan to be part of the Justice Society, otherwise he'll leak this very private information about Alan being closeted. He doesn't come out and say it, but we know it. But just all of that stuff and Alan joining the JSA on his own terms, but then like coming at J. Edgar Hoover and saying, "Hey, I know what you're up to," and kind of throwing everything back in his face. I thought it was so perfect.
Yeah, it had to come back around. It had to come back around that because, again, this is about a guy coming out of the darkness into the light. And so the reason why we started with the J. Edgar Hoover in that story just represents all the fear and, that Alan feels about how the world sees him, will see him if it knows who he really is. J. Edgar Hoover is the reason to hide and to disconnect from everyone, which is why he doesn't want to be part of he wants to be part of the JSA, but he doesn't want to bring the JSA down. He doesn't want if somebody finds out who he really is, he feels like he's going to, really hurt those people. And so all that stuff is all of it represents that for him and all of society and everything that was oppressive toward Alan, and his sexual orientation. So in the end, it had to be there had to be a confrontation, with J. Edgar Hoover where he gets to stand up and say, by the way, I changed it from the outline. That wasn't the original way this ended. There was something else that Alan was going to do that was going to represent the same thing. But as I was writing the book, I came to sometimes this happens. Like you get into the middle of it and you're like, I don't think that's the story anymore. I don't think that's the ending for this story. I think this story is about, standing up for the first time and also that he's telling this story to his kids, that he's telling it to Todd. And the reason is because it is a love story in a lot of ways, but it's a love story about how him loving his kids so much that it doesn't matter that their mother was, a villain and that she tricked him into fathering them. And it's about him coming to love himself. As much as it is about the love between him and Vladimir. I think as love stories go, the Vladimir love story is actually the least of the love stories in that thing. I think it's more about him learning to love himself and explaining that love through his love for his kids. But yeah, that was kind of what that bookend needed to be. And it felt really good. And I was really glad it was kind of on my way out of it too, because then like Todd comes in and he's like, wait, you didn't really say that, right? Like before he tells him to like take that FBI file, roll it up real tight and shove it up your,
Yeah.
He's like, you didn't say that.
Any reason why it was just obsidian and not jade?
Not a. It wasn't like a conscious choice to exclude Jade. It was more like they had to be somewhere. And I thought, well, they're going to meet Jade. Okay. And for me, I've always been very fascinated by a generational connection between like a gay dad and a gay son. Like, I think that there, especially with Todd, who came out so much earlier, who figured out his life and who he was way before his dad did. There's in some ways, Todd is the elder. He's the gay elder in their relationship. But here's Alan, who, is from, the early 20th century.
Right.
So he's technically the elder. So they have an interesting dynamic. And I really wanted to kind of just put the two of them on screen together and see kind of how that looked and what that sounded like, what that dialogue sounds like. And not that Jade being there would have interrupted it too much, but I like the clarity of it. That was really what it came down to. And also, Jade was being used in like, I think Jade was maybe already in the JSA stuff at the time. And Todd was kind of outside of things, and it was easier for me to use him, I think. I tried to use Todd in the Pride special. In fact, my first pitch was very Todd heavy. And there was a really particular reason why I needed to use him for his power set. And but we couldn't use him. Jeff Lemire was doing a big story with him, and we couldn't time it out right. And it wouldn't have made sense for him to be in my story and that one at the same time. So anyway, I'd love to explore that relationship more between father and son, find out what that looks like. Because it is a weird relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, aside from the fact that if people understand the history of those characters, like he didn't watch his, so many of the naysayers online are like, I can't believe that Alan Scott is gay, this family man. Okay. First of all, as if being gay means you can't be a family man. Number one, that's ridiculous. Right. But number two, Alan wasn't there with his kids. Like he didn't know he had kids until they were adults. They were kept from him. He wasn't raising his kids. He wasn't a big family man growing up.
Yeah.
But for the kids growing up. But that's why in the end of my story, there's this idea that someday he's going to be able to manipulate time and be able to travel in time. And Vlad explains that to him, and he's going to have that power. And we end with a vision of what that's going to look like, and an much older Alan Scott traveling, back to leave a note for himself as a young man in the 1940 story. But also he talks about how he went back to see his kids growing up here and there, and kind of look around the corner and and see them having growing up on the playground and what that was like, because he wanted to be a part of it, but he couldn't be. Which I think is, it's just something if I was Alan Scott and I had the ability to time travel, that'd probably be one of the first things I would do is because here's where I agree with the naysayers, those weirdo naysayers.
Okay.
I agree in that I don't think Alan Scott is the perfect family man, but I think Alan wants desperately to be a family man. He wants so much to have been there for his kids. He wants all of that. And so if he has a chance to travel back and and even just to see them, he's going to do it. It's the first thing he's going to do.
Yeah. How has it been dealing with naysayers? Like, has it been brutal? Like, I just can't imagine.
Comes with the territory. Look, I had it on Titans Academy. Like, I got my first death threat was on Titans Academy. And I have plenty more on Alan Scott, but there's just people out there who are, very territorial, and feel like these characters are theirs.
I've been a Green Lantern fan for like at least 40 years. And like, again, I just read my first Alan Scott book a month ago. When did I do that review? Like a month ago, something like that. Like, who is out there that's so so protective?
Most people are just like, you didn't even know who Alan Scott was,
right? And I know there are fans. There definitely are Alan Scott fans.
But there's also a lot 100%. Of people who just have a political agenda, and it has to do with, they think it's woke and whatever to, that DC, is doing this thing. They also seem to think that I'm the one that had Alan Scott in a really closet, which wasn't me. Not that I would be ashamed of that. I would do it. I would have done it, but I don't want to take the credit away from the brilliant guys who came before me who actually took had the courage to do it.
Have you ever talked to like the Nodell family?
Oh yeah, I actually throughout the course of this book, I became good friends with the Nodells, and that's one of the most delightful things about this experience.
And they've been supportive.
Unbelievably, like from the start. In fact, here's how I met Marty Nodell's son, or grandson, right? Oh, okay, hang on. Marty Nodell's grandson, his son.
Okay.
I met him through his great grandson.
Okay.
His great grandson introduced me to his grandpa, who was Marty's son. Spencer.
Got it.
Spencer reached out to me because he had seen, and there's a podcast out there. Spencer and I did a podcast together. We were guests on a show together. He reached out to me because he said, I keep seeing all these people talking about how my dad and my mom and dad would be rolling in their grave at Alan Scott being gay. Mm-hmm. And he said, I want to get out there in public with you and just put that to bed and say, that's not true. That's not who they were. And you can't defame them like that. And he wanted to do that. He believed, and I didn't know that that's what we were doing. Great. He just wanted to do a podcast together. And we got out there and he was not defending the book and the character and DC's choices with them, but defending his mom and dad. And saying, like, he told a great story about how they used to go to visit, I think it was in Kansas City or something. Every year they would go vacation and they would stay with their friends who were a gay couple and that they were progressive and open and people who would not have batted an eyelash, about having this new information about Alan. And so I thought that was just so kind and so generous. Nobody asked him to do it. Nobody asked. I didn't ask him. DC didn't ask him. Nobody did. It was just he just wanted to make sure he set the record, quote unquote, straight.
But that's so great because again, it's like listen. There's comic characters I absolutely love, and they're some of my favorite things. I have a Kyle Rayner emblem tattooed on my arm. Got it back in like '99. I love these characters, but when it comes down to it, like they're all fictional, and it's crazy when people go out and start like sending death threats for a fictional person that's made up of pencil and ink. Like it's.
I mean, look.
I don't get it.
But let's not dismiss the power of stories and the power of these characters and why they've endured. They are real to people. They do feel real to people. Yeah. You know, the Green Lantern Corps feels real to you in so many ways. Yeah. There's so much about it that means so much to you in your life that I don't take I would never take anything away from people who feel that strongly about these things that they love. I think it's good to have things that you love, you know.
Yeah, but
there's a line that you cross. There's something that happens, like there are fans, and then there are fetishists. There are people for whom it is their whole personality, and you know, and that gets dangerous. I mean, it's okay, but it can be dangerous when you take it so seriously that you feel an ownership over it. You know, Ted Sarandos, who runs Netflix, Ted was on a podcast talking about the changing nature of the relationship between the viewer and the movie in a cinematic experience. How when you and I, Ralph, were growing up, if you wanted to see a movie, you had to look in the newspaper to see what time it was playing. You had to get to the theater, drive away from your house to go to the theater, show up on time, get to your seat in the dark in a room where you had to be quiet with a lot of other people. If you got up to go to the bathroom, you were going to miss stuff, you know, and you were watching, the movie started when it started. You didn't have any control over it. And when you watched it, it was literally larger, not just than you, larger than life, larger than everything. It was huge. Movies towered over us, and they were in control. Now we experience our entertainment or a movie from in our living room. We have a device in our hand that we can stop and start it whenever we want. We can get up and go wherever we can do, like, we don't have to be quiet. We can talk through it. We can text. So our relationship to the product is different because it feels like we have the control. We have the power over it now. And I thought that was the most genius thing I'd ever heard. I think Ted Sarandos is a genius. And I was really glad rarely does those, or at that time he rarely did those kind of shows. And I was very glad to hear that, because what it reminded me of is comic books. And I feel like comic books were sort of the harbinger of this, because comic books have always been smaller than us. We've always had the ability to start and stop them whenever we want, put them down, pick them up. You know, our relationship to the characters in those stories, we had power over how we experience the story. And I think that, so therefore there's a lot of people who I think have developed an unhealthy version of that relationship, where they feel that they control them, that they have to be gatekeepers for those characters because they control them. They stop and start whenever they want. And I think now that's becoming the case with TV and movies as well. So it's a fascinating thing. In my job, it's a very fascinating thing. It's something to keep in mind. But it's the way the world is going. It's how things work. And you know, I like that you're talking about having the power when you have like He-Man posters and He-Man action figures, like just like hanging out. True. My other great love.
Yeah, I remember going. Are you excited for the movie? I can't wait for the movie.
I am so excited for the movie. Dude, you know, I worked on the Netflix show with Kevin Smith, Revelation and Revolution. I was a writer and producer on that, and I've written the Dark Horse tie-in comics for those series as well. And you know, when we're of an age that, you know, Masters of the Universe was a huge deal. Transformers was my number one as a kid, and G.I. Joe was way up there too. But I was a big He-Man and She-Ra fan.
I'm a big fan of Mask.
Oh yeah. That's also our sweet spot, isn't it?
Yeah. And then
I bet you weren't like me, because I was also a fan of Gem. I was also doing She-Ra. I was
a fan of a ton of stuff. Dude, it's funny you were talking about having the power, and I remember the first time I went to my aunt and uncle's house, and they had a VCR, and it's the first time I had seen a VCR, and they had a bunch of movies, and I'm like, I can watch Star Wars right now. They're like, yes, you can watch Star Wars right now. So they popped it in, and I was like amazed that I can just start watching Star Wars whenever I could. And then it came time to dinner, and I'll never forget the moment where I said, I'm watching Star Wars, and they said, you can pause it. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they paused it. It was the shot looking up from the chasm where Luke's about to go over, you know, before he throws the lineup and they do the swing across.
Right. And
I remember they paused it, and I went and ate dinner, and I was so antsy And then I like scarfed down my food and then went back to watch Star Wars, and Luke was still where he was, and it blew my mind.
This is about to become the old men podcast, because this is like, so when I was introduced to the VCR, we used to rent them on the weekend from Rent-A-Center or something. Yeah. And so we'd get a VCR, and it would come with like 2 tape rentals as well. So you'd get 2 tapes and a VCR for the weekend. So we'd do that. And then I remember when we bought a VCR, finally, when the price came down enough that we could afford them, we got a top loader, VCR. Okay. And I would go to, and ties into what we're talking about, which I would go to Douglas Drug, the drugstore, kind of like a CVS sort of place. I go to Douglas Drug, and I would get my comics off the spinner rack from there. Okay. And they had spinners of VHS for rent. Oh. And I would, every single week in 1986 or 7, I guess 1987, every single week, I would get to pick a tape, and I would pick Transformers the movie every single week. And I would watch it. And my mom was just like, "You've seen it every week for like months and months. What are you doing?" I said, "I'll never get enough." And by the way, I never have gotten enough of it. It's wild.
That's amazing. A couple more questions, because I got to get going here. I've taken up plenty of your time. Will from Green Lanterns podcast says, was there any plans in the story to continue, like if it continued to do more core colors, or was it always just going to be green versus red?
I didn't have any plans. I don't have any plans in terms of other colors. Anything specific right now, although we're open. I mean, obviously it's open for that, because we talk about it, I think in issue 5, I really spent a whopping like 2 or 3 pages tying in the Emerald Flame and the Crimson Flame to the larger mythology.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. Because it's so funny, because he's always outside. Alan's always outside of like the Guardians and the Green Lantern Corps and stuff like that. And so for me, those 2 panels, I was like, oh, okay, that's fun.
It predates them, so it's kind of like it's all tied together. It's all part of the same thing. It's just, there's just the origins. It's just they're on different paths. But yeah, so nothing specific on that. There were no plans for more than 6 issues. Like we designed it to be a 6-issue miniseries. That was what it was always going to be. There was always a hope that in success we would, maybe tell more of these stories, to do more of this stuff. And I do have a story that I really, really want to do, that I want to tell, and that takes us, that kind of takes this whole thing and kind of makes it even bigger, even more epic. And I don't know. Hopefully, one of these days I'll get to do it. We'll see. That would be nice.
I absolutely love the book. I have a friend who I'm going to lend the copy you sent me, because I read it digitally.
You had told me you read it digitally, so I wanted to make sure you had a hard copy.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of hard copies, like I just started getting into, DC has these compact comics.
They're great, aren't they?
Yeah, and I would love your book to be part of that. I don't know what we have to do to make that happen as fans.
Scream and shout.
Yeah. Do you think it's a possibility? Do you think there's
I mean, anything's possible. I mean, look, the book did well. It was the best selling of the 3 New Golden Age books, and it was very consistent. It consistently it came in over projection. What they thought, the number of copies they thought we were going to sell. We always sold more than that. So it was good for a niche character, kind of a niche character,
they have
controversial.
They have Far Sector in compact comics now, which that's a character.
That's a great story.
First book, so you can't get more niche than a character that's just introduced. Alan's been around for, we haven't figured out the exact amount of years, but many years.
85 years, something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So. Yeah, I feel like I would love to see that, and I would get another copy of it.
Listen, it was his first. I'll tell you this number I know. It was his first title. The first time Alan Scott had a title in 75 years.
Man,
he hadn't had his own book in 75 years. So it was an honor to get to do it.
Well,
and I felt, look, I was a fan of the character, but like,
right.
A fan, but as much as I'm a fan of a lot of characters at DC, but it was only in the making of this book that I became obsessed and a super fan. A gatekeeper, if you will.
Yeah. So do you like go back and do you read like all the Golden Age books, and do you like?
I haven't read everything, but I mean, I did a lot of reading when I was writing this book. A lot of Golden Age, Alan and JSA, and those books are tough because. And it's why I loved doing this book. Like the new Golden Age, the whole concept of the new Golden Age from Jeff was a great idea, which is like these stories and these characters are great. But when you go back and read the Golden Age comics, they were written in a specific time for a specific audience. And like they read great if you're a kid, and there's not a lot of meat on the bones. A lot of the characters all have the same voices, the way they read, the heroes all kind of sound the same. And that was by design, that was, you kind of wanted to pick up something and feel it was familiar. Yeah. But now we get a chance to go back and revisit those origins and those stories and kind of look at them through a modern lens. And so I hope it would be really nice if we get to do more of that in the future.
I would love to see the sequel.
There. Like you can go back and read the Golden Age comics, but we should also be retelling those stories. How many times have we seen a Batman origin story? Superman
or Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. We see them over and over and over again. And it's like, let's go back and revisit classic Golden Age stories, that we haven't seen since the Golden Age. I mean, there's stuff with the JSA, by the way. There's some really amazing stuff that's happened with them over the years. Jeff Lemire's doing some really cool stuff now, but like there was some great stuff. And it was obviously the Jeff Johns book as well. But I mean, in the Golden Age even, things that shouldn't get lost from the canon. They deserve another look, and they deserve a fleshing out. And by the way, Alan Scott shows you, I think you can tell those stories, you can retell those stories, add new dimensions to them, look at them through a new lens, but you don't have to radically alter. But we could have retold that story, and it would have been a great story, even if Vladimir hadn't come back, even if Alan Scott hadn't figured out he was gay until he was older. I think we still could have told a really rich story set in that time period and learned more about who he was and the origins. It's kind of what I was doing with Spectre in issue 3. That's kind of a backdoor pitch for a Spectre new Golden Age series. I'd love to revisit his origins and all the stuff that's going through that guy's mind at that time. He's a real fascinating character, especially when he's first starting out. So someday I'd love to do it.
I'd love to see a sequel to this. I didn't realize this is this is a friend from work, Bounty Hunter, said we were talking about this at work, me and him, and he was wondering if you would have any interest in doing something with the Absolute line. I mean,
any comic book professional who tells you that they don't have any interest in doing something with the Absolute line is lying to you. And if only because the Absolute line is the biggest thing in comics, like who wouldn't want to get called up to the majors,
Right.
Right. So on strictly from a vanity level, yeah, of course I want to do something on the Absolute line, but I also just have such great respect for Scott Snyder, and I think what he's done has been incredible. I mean, I've got ideas, but I'm not in the room, I'm not in the room. They don't. My phone doesn't ring.
Yeah,
I don't know. Although we were nominated for an Eisner Award for the Alan Scott book, which was wild.
That's great.
It was a
well deserved too.
Yeah,
well
it was
deserved.
Incredible. I couldn't believe it.
Just real quick. So Bounty Hunter works with me. We both hired in working for the city of Anaheim, maybe last month. And day one, I'm ready to leave the office, and I see his phone case is a Green Lantern symbol. And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. Told me that he was into GSA and liked Alan Scott. I mentioned your book. I said, check it out. It's a really, really, really good book. Came back after the weekend on a Monday. He said he went to the local comic book shop. They had it all 6 individual issues. He bought them all.
That's crazy.
Read them all.
Those covers are so unreal. They're hard to find.
And he basically said, like, on Monday, like, yeah, I read it. I loved it. And so
thank you.
It was, I can't recommend it enough. Thanks to Will.
Ralph, can I tell you though? Me. Yeah, Will recommended it to you. You recommended it to Bounty Hunter. Like it's like, I think that book in particular, it still has a life. I think because of all of the word of mouth from guys like you, and I can't thank you enough for talking about it and for sharing it with folks, getting them interested in it and checking it out. I do think it's a good primer for Alan Scott, and it'll make you want to go out. DC re-released All American number 16 when issue 1 of Alan Scott came out. It was it was in comic book shops. Yeah. And I was really glad they did, because I hopefully it'll inspire people to go back and read some of those classic stories as well.
There's some dicey stuff in there. There's some coloring options with folks that sit around the origin, which you left out of your story, which makes sense, but it was a different time, like you said. But also, like, yeah.
I wish I could say it was a kinder, gentler time, but no.
Right.
No.
Right. But that's the kind of world that Alan Scott was living in. And so it really, really, the sort of the setting of the book is perfect for the story. And I thank you for writing it. And I'm a fan, and I'm going to go read your Masters of the Universe stuff. I'm pretty sure I watched Revolutions. I'm pretty sure I did.
Well, Revelation is the first one. That's 10 episodes. It's on Netflix. And then there's 5 episodes of Revolution. That's the follow-up on Netflix as well. And then there's a tie-in comic of Revelation and then Revolution. Revolution was nominated for a Ringo Award, which was pretty cool. We have just the greatest time with that world and those characters. And that's how I met Kevin Smith, which is great. I love that guy.
Yeah, that guy's cool.
Wonderful to work with, like a incredible human being.
Yeah, I'm going to thank you for joining me. I'm going to thank everybody in the chat for joining us and having a good time and posting awesome stuff. Everybody, I'll be back next week. I don't even have a thing scheduled, so we'll see what I'm checking out next week. Stay tuned and hit the subscribe and the bell and all that stuff, and you'll know what I'm going to be doing. Do you have anything you want to plug before you take off?
Have you had Jeremy Adams on yet?
I have had Jeremy Adams on.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
His current run of Green Lantern, I just absolutely adore. It's my favorite thing since Jeff Johns' run.
Jeremy's like my best friend in the business. Like, we started in animation together, and we came into DC at the same time. Anyway, he's. I'm glad you've had him on, because he's got a lot of great stuff coming up, which would be really fun.
Yeah, and I've had Morgan Hampton on too.
Yeah, Morgan's the best. Yeah, Morgan's the best. Yeah. Morgan, we found ourselves in San Francisco at the same time together, and took me around and introduced me to all the comic book shop owners in San Francisco. I was like, this is the coolest. Like, he knew everybody, and I was like, that was the coolest thing. He's the best. So what I'm plugging right now, my final couple of issues of Star Trek Lower Decks from IDW is coming out over the next few months. So please check that out. So we finished strong on that. We're going through issue 18. I think 16, 17, and 18 are still to come out on shelves. And then I the DC Pride from last year is going to be out in trade form any day now. So check that out.
Is that what you sent
me? That's the original. That's the original one.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the Jack Hughes cover. That guy, that's his first ever thing he ever did in comics. Was that cover, and he's incredible. That guy, he's a hell of an artist out of the UK. So check those things out. And I have some more top secret stuff I can't tell you about, but Ralph might know a little bit about.
And I won't say a thing. You know stuff about me that you're not allowed to say.
We have mutually assured destruction.
The show may have started a couple minutes late because we were chatting about.
We realized that we had our missiles were pointed at each other. It was great.
Right. Thank you for showing up, Tim. Stick around for a second. I'm going to do a post roll and then I'll say a proper goodbye before.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Ralph.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for supporting the show and being super nice about the review of your book. I know it was glowing, but it's still, I don't know.
I mean, I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, until next time, everybody, as always, beware my podcast. It's Lanterns Live. Bye.